Good evening, everyone. My name is Izabela Dobrowolska. I am one of the NLP for Kids practitioners, and today's webinar is delivered to you thanks to our non-for-profit superheroes, and we are funded by the project of the community Lotto. Let me just see if there is a link that I can share here quickly with you. Okay, so if you would ask tonight, welcome everyone, and if you join a little bit later, just a quick reminder that you can use the chat box to ask any questions, or you're also more than welcome to unmute yourself at any time as we go along if you have any questions that you would like to ask live. You can also watch today's webinar and all our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. And the short link to access all those videos to our channel is u.nu/TYHU. I'm looking down because I've got it written down. So once again, the link to our superheroes channel where you can watch all webinars that we've recorded for parents throughout February and March, you can find under u.nu/TYHU. We have one more tomorrow, and tomorrow we're delivering, let me pick quickly to see the topic. I think a colleague of mine will be talking about coping with playing two roles. So for single parents, I'm sure that will be very handy, very practical. So if you haven't, please sign up, and then we'll see you there tomorrow. I am today with my lovely colleague, Amber. Amber is also one of the NLP practitioners. If you've watched before any of our webinars, you probably heard me introducing myself a few times. So I will just briefly mention again for those who maybe are watching for the first time. I am the NLP practitioners. I work in schools with children, young people, and parents, delivering workshops within small groups, one-to-one sessions, and also have my private practice outside of schools. At the moment, all delivered online, thanks to Zoom and all other platforms. Hopefully soon we will be able to go back. Actually, I already went back to school. So I've done 2 weeks in the primary school where my children attend. And exactly, I am a mum. So I have 2 children. My daughter is 9 and my son is 8. And that's it about me. And over to you, Amber.
Hi, I'm Amber Morgan. I am an NLP for Kids practitioner here in Bath. I am also a mum. I've got 2 boys that are, well, one is 12 on Saturday and the other is 14. So we're well into the teenage tantrums and stroppiness. And I think with our spread of ages for our children, Isabella, we probably have different routines. So it's quite nice to sort of talk about how we do it differently as well, because everyone's routine is different.
Definitely. I think we're going to have a variety here for our listeners. So hopefully everyone can pick something for themselves. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned it, today's topic, Amber. So thank you for reminding me. I talk about what webinar will be delivered tomorrow, but I'm not sure if I've mentioned. So if I haven't at the beginning, I do apologize. And today's webinar is developing good practical routine. And as Amber mentioned, we have different settings, different environments, different circumstances. I have younger children. Amber's are a little bit older. So we're going to share with you what worked for us as practitioners, as professionals, but also as parents. There we go. Amber, is there anything that you would like to start with? Because when we had a chat earlier today, you've mentioned, and I think, sorry to put you on the spot right away, but I really would love you to share the case study that you've mentioned to me. I think that will be a good starting point for us. And then obviously we will back this up with our own experience professionally and at home. But yes, if you don't mind sharing the case study that we've discussed.
Absolutely. I've been working with a child that has behaviour problems, or he was brought to see me for behaviour problems. And they've been going on for about a year, probably, a little bit, but got much, much worse throughout the lockdowns. And this last lockdown has had a huge impact on his behaviour. And in talking to him, it seems that the parents were working really busy jobs at home in their home offices, and he was just kind of left to his own devices all day, which meant there was no limits on screen time whatsoever. So he has just been doing what he wants when he wants to. We then started doing some family sessions as well, to include the parents in these sessions as well, to put good routines in place and to talk about sort of boundaries and consequences and privileges. And it turned out that none of that was going on either. There was no consequences for bad behaviour. There was no routines around bedtimes. So we've been working really hard together to come up with a routine that would suit them. The problem is that there's no consistency. So if the parents don't want to, just, haven't finished work in time or can't be bothered to stick to the bedtime that day because life gets in the way, then they don't bother, and the son will just stay up sort of half the night on his iPad. And because they disregard the routine, he doesn't have any respect for the routine either. So routines are very difficult to put in place from a starting point. They are obviously met with resistance, aren't they, Isabella, as we well know. Children don't like change, but that's the point of a good routine, is that change is much easier for them to cope with when there's a good routine around them in other ways. And if you're not following the routine on a regular basis, then the routine doesn't actually exist, and children just start resisting it even more. You will go through a couple of weeks putting a new routine in place of resistance and chaos and cross children, but it doesn't take longer than that, and life is much calmer and happier on the other side of
that. Absolutely. I think I remember as a very fresh and young mom reading a book. I think it was Content Little Baby book. And from that book, I very early learned how important is a routine, because the book was teaching me how to put that routine into a newborn baby's life, and how to help my baby to understand the differences between daytime and nighttime, to build different routines around meals. And so the child at any age, but also us as a grown-up, we know what is expected, what is happening, what is coming after what. And I think that way we obviously avoid a lot of stress, avoid a lot of anxiety. But those feelings and emotions, the anxiety and stress, comes out in our behaviors, which we could talk again a lot about the communication model and that we use in NLP. But if you want to hear a little bit more, you can go back to previous recordings where myself and my colleagues explain that process. But Amber, can I ask also, with regards to that case study, what type of behaviors were showing up through that young person? So just to help our parents to understand how to maybe recognize what happened.
It's anger, and the anger is a cry for attention, really. It's not that he is wanting to be difficult. He just wants to know what's expected of him. He wants to know what to expect from his parents. And a child that's a tired child becomes
Yeah.
quite an angry child. So if there's no bedtimes and no bedtime routines, and at weekends no set time to get up, then I think anger comes from a place of tiredness too.
Yeah, it's a bit messy, isn't it? You really don't know what to do, and obviously, depending on the age, the younger children not necessarily know that eating meals at regular times is good for your health, or that not watching TV until midnight, or to stop any screen time at least 2 hours before sleep. So this is our responsibility as a parent, to pass that information to our children, to young people, and help them build that healthy routine for themselves.
Absolutely. I think what comes out a lot, Isabella, is that parents don't like to be the bad guy.
Mm,
I think, particularly if it's one parent's job to sort of make sure the children are in bed, which is often falls on the mother. And so then it's been my job throughout my children's childhood to say, come on, boys, bedtime, brush your teeth, and then I don't always want to be the bad cop. I don't always want to be the one, but actually, it's not about that. It's about me being a good parent and turning them into successful adults, because there are routines throughout our whole lives, aren't there?
absolutely.
And it's something you need to get used to. There's always going to be rules and regulations, no matter where you go. And your mum telling you what to do is the soft option of a boss telling you what to do when you're an employee.
Yes, exactly. I think I wanted to link that here when you've mentioned that, because teaching our children at the early age self-discipline and how to build those routines, how to plan your day, is going to be a great skill for them when they enter employment with their first job, or even, if they decide to be entrepreneurs and run their own business, which many young people now do, and probably more will in the future, looking at how our work life will look like. So being disciplined, being systematic, being consistent is going to be important throughout their entire life, and it will be a life-changing skill. So it can mean a disaster and a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges, but if they build that as a habit, something that will be pre-coded, and it become natural, then it might make their life much easier later on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it absolutely does make it easier. And just learning basic skills when they're children, like packing their school bag when they're a bit older, but
Yes.
being able to brush their teeth independently without your mum
Yeah.
sticking your toothbrush in your mouth. All those things are huge learning skills for life. And it just shows that if you practice things, you develop a good routine around them.
Yeah.
And they just become easy, they become a natural part of your life. And that's what routines are there for, is to make things flow naturally, stop
Yeah.
fallout, stop arguments,
Yes.
and make your children successful adults.
Yeah. I remember when the first lockdown started, so just about a year ago, I was doing some work for one of my social media platform, and preparing like a schedule, daily schedule, because obviously it was all new to me, totally new, being a teacher apart from being a parent, and having two children at home who still at the age that they require some kind of support. Also, English is my second language, so helping them with all the topics and subjects that they had, I needed to do some research myself first. So building all those new tasks and activities, and at the same time trying to keep my business going, and switching from meeting my clients face to face to moving it online and making it safe for everyone, and at the same time accessible. It was a lot. It was exhausting, stressful, overwhelming, and I remember pulling hairs out. I remember really having an anxiety and stressing a lot, until I decided to implement a new daily routines with my family together. So at one day we just sat down together at the table, did a nice drawings, did a lot of artwork and fun together with the kids, and decide what time we do what. And I think that helped them to stick with the routines because they felt that they were they participated in creating it. So it wasn't something that I threw at them and said, you must do it because this is what I decide. It was taking them on board and asking them, okay, so would you prefer to do your English or math in the morning? When do you think you feel more awake or more able to focus? So just asking them questions like that and getting them involved, it helped me at the beginning because it didn't last throughout entire year and the lockdown. There had to be a lot of changes and adjustments, but for a quite a long period of time at the beginning, it worked very well because they felt that is their creation. They felt that we actually planned that, so we need to stick to it. And I think that's part of the NLP that helped me because I remember so much from my training how important it is to build a rapport with your children as a parent or as a teacher. And that's part of the effective communication that I also know from my professional background in the corporate world. I think it's important to bring everyone on board with building the routine.
Yeah, and it's really important for children to feel listened to and that their opinions are validated, because I still remember that as a child. I still remember the because I said so. Why do I have to do that? Well, because I said so. And I've never used that as a parent. I've always explained everything because I remember that feeling of just helplessness. But I don't know why. Why won't you tell me why? It's infuriating, and leads to anger issues and things like that for some children that have a propensity to get angry anyway. It's really important to validate how your children are feeling and their opinions on things. And you're right, Isabella, writing a routine together that suits all of you is going to get the best out of them. Definitely.
Yes, it worked. As I said, not for a very long time, not for the entire lockdown. We needed to make adjustments, but we just went with what we could and how we could. There's something else that came to my mind now in regards to NLP techniques, how and what could help. Dissociation, so taking yourself kind of out of the emotions, so trying to remove yourself from this emotional state that could be right now present. And dissociation is a positive way of dealing with the difficulties and overwhelming situations at work or at home. So if you new to something and you something comes at you unexpectedly, your emotions, your feelings bring some kind of reaction, and instead of going with it, you can remove yourself and try to be an observer, maybe and look at it a little bit from a different perspective, and will definitely improve the relationships at home or at work, and it will make the decisions easier to make because you will have that perspective. So that's something that, along with like building rapport and maybe reframing as well when we're building routine. I remember within that task I was doing with my children, there was a lot of questions. And I do respect what you just said, Amber, obviously trying to do as much as I can myself, explaining to my kids the reasons why. But assuming that is a little bit different with teenagers and obviously from my professional work than with few years old, because I remember at some point my son asking so many questions, but why, okay mommy, but why? And I was really frustrated, and at some point I did say, because I say so. I just couldn't find any other argument or explanation. I simply ran out of any related arguments. I couldn't. And I don't know if he was testing me or he was genuinely curious or it wasn't valid or strong enough, the arguments I already given. But yes, at some point I just said, because I say so, just do it.
I think we all, I think we all do. We can't always be the parent we would like to be. But, routines here have definitely gone out the window a bit during the last lockdown. I would rather, so we would normally have screen time limits. And hearing my 14-year-old son on a game with his friends on his PlayStation, laughing and laughing and laughing after the year we've all had, was just the nicest feeling in the world. And so I let him stay on. And now that habit's very hard to reverse.
Yes, I remember. And many parents I worked with were asking me what to do and how, whether we should restrict or try to limit that amount of time. And especially, I think, for teenagers, because younger children, at least around the primary age, they're still quite happy to be at home with parents. They're still happy to interact with parents. And for them, it is enough. I don't think my children missed their online chatting to their friends as much as other members of my family who are much older. For my kids, it was enough that they could see them once or twice a week on the screen, and they were just waiting for being back at school. Whether for young people at secondary level and above, those years are the most important. They're learning all of their social skills. They learning and discovering who they are. And during lockdown, it has been taken away from them. So it wasn't even something that they voluntarily or out of their choice given up. It has been ripped out from their rights, and no one is going to give it back to them. So this whole year that has been up and down, it's not going to come back. I remember speaking to one of my clients at GCSE level, and they were like, well, no one is going to give me back that time that normally everyone have their teachers support and they are at school, and when they're preparing for GCSEs they can bounce back and talk about the topics or assignments with their friends, with their peers, with other students. They didn't have that during the lockdown, and they still had to prepare and work hard. So it was so different. And there was someone at year 7, so just transitioning to secondary school. For them, it was normally we get that year to build new friends, to get to know new teachers, get familiar with the school, with classrooms and everything. They couldn't. They had no opportunity to get to know all the new kids in their class. They might have had friends from primary school, 1, 2, or 3, but the rest, they never had a chance to really get to know each other. And speaking to their parents, it made me aware that this year had a massive impact on their communication skills, because they learn so much just to text. When they wanted to get to know those kids from that class, they were not speaking to them verbally, so they were not using their facial expressions and their body language. And we know as NLP practitioners how important it is to having that rapport, to have that effective communication. They didn't have that. So they started building the friendships with new kids just by texting, spending time on the internet or phones. I think I was very much like you prior to lockdown. I was very not strict, because luckily my kids were never drawn too much to computer games and any electronical gadgets. They prefer still to go and kick the ball and do some other stuff outside in a park or in the garden. But I'm also fully aware that this might change, so I'm just enjoying as much as I can. Um, but I had many parents and teachers asking what to do, whether to restrict that time. And at the beginning, I was confused. I wasn't sure what my own opinion was. I wasn't sure what will be better, but obviously observing and watching what was happening with young people, eventually I said no. If anyone asked me what's my opinion, what I would do, I would say just obviously monitor the quality rather than quantity, and see what they watching or who they talking to, what are the topics that they interested when they spending time, what type of games they playing, rather than removing it, because for them it was the only way to stay in touch with those people, even if they just did by text and getting to know and asking each other questions. And like you said, laughing, enjoying those few moments together, socializing and having similar interests and topics to laugh about and to talk about. It was so important that I remember asking one parent, actually mom, a single mom, I was literally begging her not to remove the phone as a punishment, because that was her go-to, and it worked because the child was really addicted. I don't know if I should say addicted. It was depending a lot, because for their social life, that was the only tool.
Yeah.
So we had conversations about that. But Amber, tell us more, because obviously you know that from not only professional perspective, but from your own home.
Well, my 14-year-old it would be on for hours and hours each day if it was allowed, which over lockdown it was, because it was a very happy place for him to be. There were a group of 5. In fact, they started off as a group of 5, and more people joined, and the girls started joining as well. So actually, it became quite a big group of people chatting, and it was always upbeat, funny, humorous, good-natured, a laugh. My 11-year-old isn't as interested. This is about the age, Isabella, where it starts changing. Yeah. He really likes being on with his friends. There's a lot of them playing Fortnite, and so he joins in that. But he's the one that is often saying, "Guys, calm down. It's supposed to be fun." And then when I can hear that on a loop, I say to him, "Come on, let's go and play a game or something and do something instead," because it's not fun. So it's very different for both of them. But as I say, my younger one will not want to be on for hours. He'll want to be on for a little bit, and then he loves playing board games and cards. I've just taught him backgammon as well. So he loves that. And
Backgammon.
yeah, so he's really lovely. Still loves spending time with his parents, but 14-year-olds don't like spending time with their parents so much, and there's a scientific reason for that. It's that is what they're meant to do. They're supposed to start cutting their ties with the parents at this age in order to become independent.
Independent, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious to know whether you attempted or succeeded in building any routine around the technology during the lockdown, or maybe now when we obviously in that kind of pull-push situation, because we're still having the effects of the lockdown, but now they're out, they can interact more. So what is it like for you?
So during the last lockdown, as I say, we totally relaxed routines. It would be, there were still bedtimes, still times they had to be in bed because they had to be up for school the next day. So we still had bedtimes. We still had times to come off the screen before, about 40 minutes before bed normally, so that they could just unwind, calm down. From the problem with gaming is that games are so fast paced that life just seems quite boring afterwards. I think it's so adrenaline fueled that you're not in a lockdown situation. You are not going to get that adrenaline rush any other way. So for a 14-year-old that you know, teenagers are dopamine seekers. That's, you know, that's what they do. They have lower levels of dopamine than young children or adults. And so they can make it quickly, but they don't store it in the same way that we do.
Same.
So they have to keep accessing more adrenaline fueled things, which is why teenagers take risks. And so for my eldest son, he really needs to just sort of have that unwinding time before he goes to bed, because otherwise he's just, you know, he's driving this really fast car, or he's shooting baddies or something. So in lockdown, we still had those routines. There was still bedtime routines. There was still teeth brushing, and, you know, breakfast became much later. At weekends, there weren't really any routines at all. It was just, you know, whatever.
Relaxed, yeah.
But now we are back at school. We are gently reducing the screen times, because I don't want it to seem like a punishment, because it isn't a punishment, but I would like to get back to a routine that closer to the one we had previously, which I don't think we'll ever get back to, but, you know, too much time's gone by. So we're gradually reducing it. And the routine we had before these lockdowns was an hour's screen time in the evening, plus they could earn more by doing other things. Now, that wasn't jobs and chores, that was doing things out of the house with friends, or taking the dog for a walk, or coming on a family walk, or playing a game with us, so that they didn't forget how to do other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened to the 14-year-old now. He's forgotten how to do other things and find pleasure in other things.
I think that's important, and it's amazing what you said, because most people will say, okay, well, you want to earn something. Like my son, he's 8 and he loves watching football. So for him, it's not much about games apart from FIFA. But it will be a lot about, if I go to my YouTube channel, I can see Sky Sports, Sky Sports, Sky Sports. So he watch a lot of games. And he only recently started. So before, he was never drawn into watching the game on the screen. But during lockdown, they were not allowed. So he played in a club as well. And they obviously couldn't have any of their own trainings. They couldn't play the match. So it was the only substitution for him. And he became really addicted. So at some point he came to me and said, okay, Mom, if I want to watch another game or like short episodes, can I clean the garden, or can I do something? I naturally went with it, because obviously help for me, why not? Clean house or clean bedroom if you want some extra time. But what you said is amazing, because earning, it wasn't about doing jobs that are unpleasant. It was about reminding them that there is joy in something else, not only screen, not only the gaming, or the you know, that adrenaline's on even within watching the football game. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. I wish you told me that earlier.
So for my 14-year-old, I got into NLP because he was extremely anxious. He suffered really badly with anxiety. So obviously our big fear with these lockdowns was that he was going to be very anxious again about going back to school. He used to be sick before going to school. I would hear him walking down to the bus sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I knew that he was being sick before he was leaving the house. And it wasn't about school. He loves school. He absolutely loves his school. So it wasn't about school. It's always been about not being with me. And so for him, I was thinking, if he doesn't go out and do some more normal things and stays in the house for the whole lockdown, he's not going to leave the house again without.
Yes, because it will be more time with you.
Yeah, incredibly anxious. So actually, it was forcing him to go out of the house for twice a week with a friend, when you could meet one friend in this last lockdown. So twice a week he would meet a friend, and in going and doing those normal things, he would earn extra screen time, because it was so important for him to do that in order to carry on functioning when he had to go back to school.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And you've mentioned earlier that you've mentioned that importance of the morning and evening routines. And when I was doing research earlier today, I read about Benjamin Franklin. So I think if you ever heard about his routine, he was really regimental with his daily routine. He was quite a busy and active man. But what he did, apart of having mornings for his books and reading, and I think afternoon for his accounts or finance or whatever other work he was doing, he set himself a time. It wasn't like, I think what I liked the most, that he left the flexibility. So his routine, from what I read, it wasn't like, I can imagine, I don't know, President of America or our royal family in the UK having everything really to a tight schedule, like to 5 minutes precision. That would be overwhelming for me, and that would be frightening and scary, and I would scream. And the reason for that, I think, is because that was my experience. So my over 10, 12 years in a corporate, this is how my days looked like. And over then, I thought that's the only way to have it really so tied up, because there was so much to do. But now I know from the perspective that this was adding to my anxiety, and it actually caused me leaving that environment because I wasn't happy anymore. And it probably caused a lot of burnouts for professionals at the moment too. So what Benjamin Franklin did, let me just actually find that article briefly here. He set himself those routines, so mornings for books, then afternoon without giving a specific time, and then evening for his pleasures or maybe friends or going for a walk. But there were two important points in his daily routine that relates to what I like now. So I have a morning and evening routine, which I will share with you in a minute. But he was asking himself two versions of the same questions. In the morning, it was, what good shall I do this day? And in the evening, it was, what good have I done today? And when I read that, I think it was really, really interesting, because it kind of gave him a motivation to think about what good can you do and keep that at the back of your mind, and trying to keep your schedule focused, keeping your attention on those priorities. And then in the evening is what is very fancy and popular, and thanks to neuroscience, we understand the benefit of gratitude and appreciations. So I do gratitude journals and I do writing. But I think so many years ago, before we had the gratitude journals, he was doing the same in his mind. He was looking back at his day and thinking about what good have he done during that day and how much he actually achieved. And I think that's a very good routine. And if you can't, for whatever reason, because maybe you're not a very organized person, or maybe you're stressed and you don't function very well in the strict routine, those 2 points will be important, just to start the day with those thoughts about how to keep the priorities in your mind. And then at the end of the day, look back at what you've achieved, how much you completed, almost like that tick box when you're crossing off what you've done and what you need to transfer to your next day.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a very fluid work routine, in that obviously I have my appointment times to see clients, but I don't have timings at all. I just have the things that I want to achieve that day.
Yeah.
And I do them in whatever order I want to do them, and however, whatever time of day I want to do them, because I couldn't stick to a
Yes.
specific timings.
I think same. I don't know if it's me now disliking that very strict routine after so many years in a corporate, or maybe I've changed, and obviously our knowledge has changed. We know much more about our brain, our mind, and how it impacts all the emotions. So the knowledge is different and my awareness is different. But similarly to you, I have my appointments with clients, which are booked everywhere in my calendar, my phone, my laptop, just to make sure that I've got the reminders right in front of me when I'm running to drop the kids to school, pick them up, do some shopping. And as you said, just keeping it fluid. When is my time for admin? When is my time for some social media advertisement? Just to give in that flexibility. Because if something goes wrong or if something unexpected comes up,
Which it
we
always
as
does.
parents, exactly, always does, we need that scope of space and time to be able to move and juggle things around, and reprioritize, just change the priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, routine is absolutely vital in everyone's
Yeah.
lives, I think, in order to live a successful and happy and reduced, I wouldn't say stress-free because no life is stress-free, but reduced stress life. Um, then I just think it's really, really vital. Do you think we should talk a little bit about the sort of routines, that work for parents?
I think so, because we could be chatting here forever, and I think parents want some tangible information from us.
And the benefits of routine. Maybe we should
Yeah.
do that first, the benefits of routines.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so and routines are sort of vital for security. It makes children feel safe. They know what to expect, they know what's coming, and they know what's expected of them. It builds their confidence because they become masters of the basic tasks that they will need to carry on throughout their lives. And in order to succeed at other things, they'll need to remember that they've managed to master these more simple skills at some point. So that's things like brushing their teeth independently, brushing their hair independently, setting an alarm. So my youngest son is year 7, so he's having to get himself up for secondary school and get his bag ready and things like that. Those are all incredibly important skills for the rest of your life. But more importantly, I think routine builds just a calmer, happier home. If children know that every single night, and so this is the consistency being important, every single night that you have to go upstairs half an hour before bedtime, go to the toilet, brush your teeth, get settled down for bed. If you do that every single night, that means that they get used to doing it. They start doing it independently, and therefore we don't have to nag as much, which is just a pleasure. I don't want to be the big bad ogre. I want to be a lovely mummy having a nice time with my children. I don't want to be going, I've told you 3 times brush your teeth, because it's not nice for them and it's not nice for me. So I think there's far less battles involved when there's a good routine in place.
Absolutely. I think this is amazing how you pointed those aspects, because remembering how messy my life was before I become a parent, before I actually trained myself in all this NLP coaching and therapeutical skills, it definitely would be a disaster by now. Just thinking about how stressful and how unpredictable life would be, and the benefits. Now again, we know much more about the science. We've got the research, that evidence is really tangible, is something that we can, they put all those things on your head and actually checking the waves and the reactions and your emotions. It's absolutely amazing how much more we know about simple things like building a routine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all fear change, don't we? And the fear of
Yes.
the unknown is really a big deal for
Yeah.
humans, and for children in particular. So to always have this constant knowledge that even if the other things around you are changing, your home routine is going to stay. I wouldn't say the same, because it's impossible to keep it the same every day, but it'll always look similar, won't it? Bedtimes might move a little bit or whatever, but it'll always be similar. And that really creates stability and security for children. I think it's a good idea to mention children with ASD as well, because
Yes.
working with children with ASD for a really long period of time, autistic children, children with Asperger's in particular, really need a routine, and they don't like change at all. Change completely throws them off. So a really clear routine. In fact, I work with an autistic child on a regular basis, and for his family, it's keep the routine all through the holidays. You know, even though you don't have to get up so early to go to
Yeah.
school, he can't cope if he's not getting up at that time, if his
Yes.
routine changes at all. So it's imperative for those children that
I
there's a good
remember.
routine in place. And actually, for
Definitely. And
parents, we're doing this webinar for lone parents, aren't we? I mean, to be responsible for all of this on your own is a big feat. So in
yeah.
order to manage it better, to have a good routine in place so that you know what's expected, your children know what's expected, it just will really help overcome all those hurdles and all those battles that you may otherwise have.
It's time saving as well, isn't it? Because as you said, you don't have to do the nagging. Things are being done quicker because everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what is happening, what comes after what. And going back to autistic children, I remember as a apprenticeship coach, I had one of the students, my students, an apprentice whom I didn't know, so I wasn't informed in advance that he was autistic. And when I arrived at the reception in his workplace for our first meeting, the first thing that he said to me, and that was a grown man, well, adult, around 19 years old that time. The first thing he said to me, he said, "You know, I've got autism." I said, "No." "So, you know, I don't like changes." And I was like, "I know. Um, you know, I'm not happy you're here because you're my second coach. And that's a change. I don't like changes." I was like, "You're not making it easier for me." It took me a while, but he was the one who taught me how productive my days could be, because so much we talk about the routine, how he structure his day from the moment he wakes up and how he's preparing everything to be independent, to be as someone who is responsible for their own actions, who is responsible for the work and the piece of projects that he delivers, that it actually made me want to improve my schedule. It made me more productive because of what I've learned from him. Even though I was his coach and I was there to support him, I've learned so much throughout a whole year I worked with him, that absolutely I can now remember everything he said, how he was showing me his spreadsheet and everything that he had planned. And he said he's always been like that because it was just him and his mom.
Yeah.
His mom had to work. As a single parent, she had to take care of the bills and rent and house and obviously support him and all his additional needs. He said that he learned that very early, not only to take care of himself, but to build that routine to fit more, to be more productive, to even have the space and time for a rest. He planned that, but he said it just made him happy. He could not function without it.
No, I mean, which is brilliant. It's very difficult to be so rigid in your routine that change completely throws you off. But in order to function successfully, that's what they need to do.
I think what was interesting that even though he was aware and admitted he doesn't like the changes, he wasn't tough with it. So he wasn't, reacting in any unexpected way to that change. He was just frank with me and upfront and said, "I just don't like it. This is the way I am, and deal with it." And I respected that a lot. I respected that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just seen there's something in the chat box.
Yes. I think we
Okay.
got it.
It's just someone saying they have to go
Yeah.
and watch the remaining content when available. So that's fine.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, so but we talked about sort of creating sort of successful adults, and for a child to learn about routine now is so helpful that for their future. It makes them independent and giving them chores to do. I know I said I sort of was rewarding my son with more screen time because by him doing other things, like remembering how to do other fun things. But equally, there's chores too. What my eldest son is responsible for the recycling. My youngest son is responsible for the dishwasher. My eldest son never gives me his washing. It stays all over his floor. So now I've started going on laundry strike. So he's going to have to do that as well.
Excellent.
They can both cook. They both take the dog for a walk. So actually, all those things are great skills for future life.
It is amazing. And from my experience, again, working with apprentices and working within HR, so recruiting many students, graduates, and they had amazing, perfect CV and, you know, all the best grades, but they were so unprepared for that life, that grown-up, mature, responsible, where they had to fit into some kind of schedule, because from 9 to 5 they had to fulfill some tasks and something was expected. So you're absolutely right. Giving them that opportunity to prove themselves, not only us, but prove themselves that they can take responsibilities, that they can plan, they can take an accountability for their action. I've got 2, 9 and 8 years old at home, and similarly they share. And I think lockdown helped me a lot, because in the past they were coming back from school, some after school activities. It was a little bit more challenging for me to encourage them to want to do those tasks. But during the lockdown, they were mornings when I was still on the call or maybe doing something else, and I would go downstairs and the breakfast was made, because they learn how to fry the eggs or do some, you know, make my coffee. My daughter learned how to use the coffee machine because she wanted to make me a coffee while I'm on the call or on a Zoom. They share, so my son is responsible for mopping and hoovering, even though he's just 8 years old, so he does what he can. And I remember there were points like, oh my gosh, I need to do it after him. I need to fix it because he didn't do it right. And I really had to talk to myself and stop myself from doing it, because it was about his confidence. And I knew that if I knock it down now, again, it will have a massive effect when he goes to work and start having those tasks that he needs to improve. So we talked about it. I give him feedback, but I stopped myself from doing it after him. My daughter is responsible for dishwasher and things like that. They pick those chores. They had a whole scope of it, and they decide what they want to do and how they want to share. And they were proud of that during lockdown, that they were part of that family. And we had a routine. So in the morning, they will prepare table for breakfast or before dinner. And then after dinner, they will clean dishes. And just because they wanted to have time with us as well, myself and my husband both worked from home, and we were constantly busy. And if we had to do all those additional tiny things, it will be almost none time left with them. So I think they were observant, or I'm missing the word, aware what needs to be done, and they stepped up and decide. And it stayed. Now we're back to school and they're still doing their chores, they still remember, and it's so nice to see how they're taking that responsibility and being accountable.
Lovely to be able to give the praise as well, isn't it? Because actually when they're doing stuff like that that's really helpful to you, and I honestly think children should be helping, because it's teaching them skills for life. It's not abusing them, you know, just little things here and there.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think, you know, but then you say thank you so much. That's one less thing for me to do today.
Yes.
And they feel good. They feel like they've helped you out, which is a really lovely sensation for them too. What do you think, Isabella, is the most important part of your routine as a parent?
I think being consistent. So building a routine is one thing, and having it working for a day or a week or a month. But then if something happen and change, instead of giving up and dropping it all, trying just to adjust, but stick with what we can. And I think that's the most important aspect for me during the lockdown, because I had to modify and change the way I was working. I had to find a laptop, deal with the internet, everything that everyone else was dealing with. Um, so our routine, as you mentioned, yours prior lockdown was scrapped completely, went over the roof. And at the beginning, we even homeschooling was different because we still had to print a lot for them to do it at home. Only later schools were able to um, learn how to use other tools, and we could do that online. It took a while, so we even through the lockdown had to adjust those routines few times. But instead of just saying it's not working, no point, or giving it up, just sticking with it.
Yeah,
Adjust what you have to and stick with it and be consistent and persistent.
yeah, absolutely. I think having a good bedtime routine is really important, and I think probably prior to becoming an NLP practitioner, I hadn't realized how much you can change your own body clock, so your circadian rhythm, yourself, by simply keeping the same bedtime and keeping the same time that you wake up. Um,
Absolutely.
and I don't think I'd realized that, and realized how important it was for my children to have that consistency in order to set their body clock. So my eldest son was an awful sleeper. He didn't sleep through the night till he was 7. And that wasn't because of bad routines, but it was probably because I didn't keep those same timings. So I think bedtime is really, really important. Bedtimes and times to wake up. Um, I think that some family time is a really important time to put in the schedule. Um, and I think be prepared for change. I think you're right, Isabella. It's never going to work if it doesn't suit you. So if you're trying to put your child's bedtime at a time that you will have just finished work, literally just finished, you won't be um, at your best to put them to bed. They won't be getting the calm, happy mummy that's got time for them. So adjust it until you're going to be in the right frame of mind to be there and present to put them to bed. Make it work for you, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. And I think I love what you said about the night routine, because that's probably one of the most important in our house. And it isn't very rigorous to the minute, or, very stressful. Sometimes we have some family gatherings, or even if that's a Zoom with someone in another country, and we allow flexibility again. But knowing that you need a specific amount of hours of good sleep. So it's not having 10 hours of a sleep when you're waking up because you're anxious and keep thinking about it. It's having that deep, restful sleep is important. And I was amazed how quickly my son adapts. So he's always been a very good sleeper, luckily, but his body clock is amazing. I have the alarms set up for myself, and just as I'm doing my morning routines, I also have a reminders in my phone to check whether they are um, fitting in with the time that we have available, because obviously we need to leave at specific time ready for school now. And I thought that I will really struggle after the lockdown because we didn't have that. They, in primary school, they didn't have, like most secondary school, specific time that they have to log in to meet their teachers. They had the recordings, just to register in the morning, and then they had the recording, so they could actually choose which lesson they do at what time, watch the recording from the teacher and complete that. So those morning routines were not so strict. And I was really worried that once we go back to school, they will be struggling. But my son's brain body somehow counted back how many hours he needs, and he always wakes up at the same time, always before I even get the chance to go and wake him up, because he knows. And when I'm sitting and reading a book at bedtime, and for some reason that is being shifted by, let's say, half an hour, so we end up reading those books in bedtime half an hour later, I know that second page and he's gone. He's just sleeping,
Oh,
because
really?
his brain knows. And I remember he was, I think, 7, and we went to a big 50th, like a full anniversary. And there was music and people were dancing. My son just came, Mom, I'm going to sleep. I was like, let me find that and we go home. He said, no, I'm going to sleep. There is a sofa. And there were 2 elderly ladies sitting on the sofa. He just went and said, excuse me, sat in between and fall asleep in the middle of the party with the music. His brain and his body knows the time, and he can honestly fall asleep upside down or standing if it's the time for him to go to sleep.
You wait till he's a teenager, the waking up won't be quite so easy.
I do pray that it won't change, because at least that's one less child in the morning, because my daughter is totally opposite and she's more of a night owl. So if I don't put that kind of meditation to calm her down and switch her brain is working so fast. The waves are like, oh my God, crazy, on
Oh,
a roller coaster. So they totally opposite.
yeah,
Um, but I think that's what also is important in a routine, making sure that one routine doesn't fit everyone, and in knowing those tiny differences to help your children and help yourself, as you said, especially if you are a single parent and you have to do it all by yourself because you don't have a partner. You might be lucky if you have maybe grandparents or some extended family to help, but on a day-to-day basis, they will have their life and you still have to deal with all of that yourself.
yeah,
So just understanding that maybe your routine is not necessarily going to fit your child's routine because they are different, because their brain, their body just worked different. They have a different clock, and trying to work that out.
yeah, absolutely. The final thing, I've just sort of noticed the time, but the final thing I was
Ah,
thinking is,
I can see the time behind you, so I'm just.
I just saw it. The final thing I was thinking is actually the most helpful thing that my boys do ever as part of their routine is pack their school bags the night before. Now they're at secondary school, so they have to take the right books for the right day and the right PE kit for the right day. I know you don't have the same sort of thing at primary school. However, making sure that the water bottle's there, making sure that they've got PE kit if they need it, making sure that they've got a snack if they need it. Just having those things and the coat and the shoes ready to go in the morning saves an awful lot of time and an awful lot of stress in the morning.
Yes, definitely. I remember doing that myself. So my kids, you rightly said, are not at that age yet. So I end up just making sure they've got a water bottle with them and snacks still. Maybe I shouldn't. But I remember doing that myself, always packing my bag and making sure that I've got the right books for the subjects and topics and all those extra activities at school. But also now my experience with one of the clients, and that was 14-year-old child. It was a girl. Um, Her mom struggled in the morning very much. They had screaming to the point that neighbors were coming knocking the door if everything is okay. And half of the street could hear the girl screaming. And that was purely because there was no routine, no evening routine, no morning routine. So in the evening, she was on her phone watching, or she wasn't playing games or chatting, but she was just watching a lot of movies on YouTube or Netflix. I can't remember, and literally falling asleep with that screen, and she wouldn't give it away to her parents until she fell asleep, and they just couldn't bother anymore whether it was on or not. But that also had a knock-on effect in the morning, because
Yeah.
as you said, your son prepared and they both packed their bags. She was doing that in the morning in the rush because she was so tired, and she maybe was getting up last minute,
Mm.
that it ended up with her massive anxiety, and she always had a go at her mum, always blamed her mum, shouted at mum that she didn't do it, that maybe her PE kit is dirty and smelly because it wasn't washed, and that she can't find her geography book because it's under a stack of other books somewhere under the bed. So it took a while to not only build a routine that will fit them, but to implement that routine and to prove that it actually works, and it can help with the mental health, with the mental state of everyone in
Yeah.
that house and neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah, those neighbours must be relieved that that changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Amber. I'm so pleased that we were here together. It's so much nicer when we can bounce different experiences and opinions. Thank you very much for being here today. And any parents, if you have any questions, we won't have any more Q&A sessions, but you're more than welcome to either send your questions or comments under the videos on our YouTube channel, or reach out to any of us through our NLP for Kids or our Superheroes website.
Yeah,
Anything
great.
else?
No, I don't think so. Lovely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Have a lovely night, and bye.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.